Hello everyone, this is the second video on repetition structures, and before continuing with my video, please do go and check out two videos by Programmees about while loop, which is the topic of the previous video. They have very nice examples, very basic examples, so do check them out and follow along. The links will be under this file in the description to the video. And then the current topic, for loops. There is also a very nice introductory video. Please do check it out and come back for my summary and a couple of more interesting or a little bit more complex examples. Okay, I give you a moment to switch over, check out these two videos, do watch them, they are very nice. And let's continue. So since you watched those two videos that I mentioned earlier, well, let's just quickly run through this. We're talking about for loops. This is not really the general format for them, for variable in list, value 1, value 2, etc. Execute statements, but that's a good approximation of what you can do. There is a notion of target variable that the book uses, that is a variable that is called variable over here. It is assigned in the beginning of each iteration. All right, let's look at this example, and it's important to maybe slow down enough to understand it in basic examples. And in general, that's a rule for everything. If you slow down enough, if you spend enough time working through the details, you will understand it well, and hopefully you will remember it. So we have a code for num in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, print num. The meaning of this is the following. Num is a variable, and on the first iteration, num is assigned the first value on the list, which is 1, and the indented statements, in this case it's just a print statement, is executed, and 1 is printed. So first time this iteration runs, on the first iteration we get 1 printed. Next time num equals 2, and hence print num will print number 2. And so on. We have 5 iterations. On the last iteration, num will be equal to 5, and print num will print 5. Overall, you will get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 printed out, one under the other. And we need to talk a little bit more about the range objects, range function. That is a function that can be used instead of explicitly listing like this. You can use a range function, and it returns an iterable object that is an object that can be iterated over. Range can be used with different characteristics. One argument using as ending limit, 2 arguments, starting value and ending value, and 3 arguments, step value. The third argument is the step value. So let me come up with a basic example here, just something to run. First of all, for num in range 7, print num. Let us see what it does. It prints the numbers from 0 to 6. This is basically how range works. 7 is the ending limit. It is not reached. And by default, the enumeration in Python starts from 0. So you count from 0 in Python, not from 1. So range 7 is an iterable that produces 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. On every iteration, num is equal to the consecutive value, and that value is printed. Okay, now if that is clear, we can make it a little bit more interesting. So range from 2 to 7. Lower bound or starting value 2 is where we start, so 2 is printed, num equals 2 on the first iteration, then num equals 3 on the second iteration, and so on. Again, 7 is not actually a value in this range, it is an upper limit. And if that sounds good to you, let us add the step. So we start from 2 to 10. I just need a few more values. And I take a step 3. What does it do? It prints 2, 5, 8. First of all, my range begins at 2. 10 is the upper limit. But we take a step of 3. So the first value, 2, is printed. And that is the first value in this range. Next value will be 2 plus the step, 2 plus 3, 5, and that is printed because all we do is just print the value. And last value will be 5 plus 3, that is 8, and that is all that this range can do. It is important to remember the range, and we will use the range very often. And lastly, an example of the reverse order from 10 to 1 with a step -2. So it doesn't have to be an increase in order. We can have a decrease in order. This is a starting value. This is a limit. It will not be reached. And the increment is negative, so it kind of goes down. Starting from 10, then 8, 6, 4, and 2. Let's see. And here we go, 10, 8, 6, 4, and 2. So that gives you quite a flexibility in creating ranges that you need to work with. One basic application of that, since I'm already having a for loop here, find sum of squares from 1 to 10. That is 1 square plus 2 square plus, and so on, 10 square. So we will need to choose the range of values so that values 1 through 10 are produced. And obviously we want to start from 1. Actually, since we're squaring and adding, if we start from 0, that's okay, but not necessary. I'm gonna define the range of values from 1 and not to 10. Take a moment to think why, based on what I said earlier. It should be 11. That is the end limit that is not reached. The last value in this sum is 10. To double check that, first time around, I'm gonna just print them out. Don't do anything else. Don't do too much. I get the range of the values that I want. By the way, very, very important to be comfortable with ranges in every shape and form with 1, 2, and 3 arguments, because it will make your work more consistent and fast, and it will help you quite a bit on the midterm test, for example, and on the final test, because that is one of the things that will be used quite a bit all over the class. So instead of just printing this, I'm going to introduce a variable total. Total is my variable. It is 0 by default. And then I'm going to add something to total, reassign total to be total plus num squared. Okay. That will not work. I need to go back to, this would work in Sage, but not here. Anyway, this is a formula, and that way total will be printed. Now I'm going to put print statement over here and take a moment, stop a video, figure out what exactly will this do. Again, there will be some questions on the midterm and the final, which show you a snippet of code. You cannot run it, but you have to tell what exactly does it do. So let me run it and show you what it does now. Here we go. On the first iteration, num, the first value was starting value 1, total was reassigned total was 0, total is reassigned 0 plus 1 squared, that is 1. And the total, the current total, is printed. Second iteration, the next number in the range is 2. Num equals 2, so total will be reassigned to 1, previous total value, plus 2 squared. And that will be 5. And the next num will be 3, so we are adding 3 squared, that is 9, to existing total 5, and reassigning it to total, it is 14. So we have a kind of a run in total, and that is the answer that we like. And again, if we don't want to do extra printing, and we want this to be printed only once, only our answer, I will just indent it with the 4, not inside the loop. Sum of squares, I'll say something like sum of squares from 1 to our value to, I'll just say 10, and is, I guess, is total. Let's rerun this and see how it does. Sum of squares from 1 to 10 is 385. Okay, that was an example. We will return to it in a moment. It's also an important example because we computed a running total for numbers ranging in 1 through 10, including 10. We have computed the sum of all the squares of those numbers. Again, if you like to understand better how it works, indent printing statement inside the for loop and look at the current sums and understand how it goes from one to the next one. This is very, very, very important. And let me switch to the slides for a bit, and I'll come back to this example a little later. So we used target variable. Our target variable was num, and we used it inside the loop to compute the sum of squares. You could do other things with it. So the programmer does not know exactly how many times the loop will execute. It's up to a user to decide that, so you can ask user for input. For example, you want to sum up numbers from 1 to some upper number, not necessarily 10, but 21, and you can make it work, and I will go back to my example shortly. So be careful with range, does not include the ending limit, and ranges can be decreasing. I already showed you an example like that. This range will start from 10 and go down to 1, including to 1. It will not produce 0 with decrements of 1. All right, and we were already computing the running total or some kind of accumulated value. In our example, it was the square of a number. So a loop reads through each number in this series, and we can compute a total, which I guess you did see in one of the ProgramMiss videos, or square, or any other value, and that will can be accumulated in the accumulator variable, which I called total in my code. So this is a slightly different design. I will talk about it a little later. Let's go back to my program. No. Let's continue for a bit, and we'll get back to my program for some interesting developments there. We need to learn about augmented assignment operator, and instead of reassigning x equals to x plus y, x plus 5 like in this picture, or y equals to y minus 2 like in this picture, there is a shorthand notation. X plus equals 5 means exactly the same thing as x equals to x plus 5. You can do the same thing with subtraction, multiplication, division, and remember what this is. Take a moment. This is a remainder. You can do this to the remainder. Alright, and now it's time to go back to our example and implement this. Okay, so sorry, run py. Here it is. First of all, instead of total equal to total plus num, I'm gonna do plus equals to num squared. So update the value of total by adding num squared. Earlier I said we talked that this number does not need to be constant, and I'm going to ask the user to suggest the upper value. So that would be n. Let me call it a capital N. This will be int input. Enter the highest value, the highest number to sum up from 1 to n squared. And I will say number capital N to sum up the squares from 1 to n squared. If you like, spend a little bit of time thinking what this means. So instead of just summing up to 10, I want to sum up to any number that user provides. So given that number, we should change our code, and there is definitely something to change here. Pause the video, think what it is. It is going to be n plus 1, of course, because to sum up to n squared including, we have to have our upper limit n plus 1. All right, let's check that it works. Okay, I will enter 3. Sorry, I will enter 3 here, and the sum of squares from 1 to 10 is 14. I need to change it in the other place. And by the way, that is why you should avoid using constants in the middle of your code and just type up a number in the middle of your code, because then you are stuck running around and fixing it. So this will be the end of my string, n, comma, and over here is. Okay, now that works better. Let's see. Enter highest number n to sum up. 3, for example. Sum of squares from 1 to 3 is 14. And I need to fix a typo over there for clarity. So 3. And the sum of squares from 1 to 3 is 14. 1 square plus 2 square plus 3 square. You can count them, and it is 14. Right? Okay. So that was a good example, and we have done quite a bit for this example. I still wanted to say a little bit about our scheme over here, calculating the running total. So in general, that's how it works. We set an accumulator equals to 0. We can call it accumulator, or we can call it total, whatever is more convenient. You see a diamond here and a question, is there another number to add? If true, read the next number or get this number and then add the number to the accumulator. And finally, if not true, then continue. Okay, do you think we can make it happen? What kind of loop would you use here? That would be a major question. So the diamond means a condition. Thus, we have to use a condition-controlled loop. There is no other way around it. In this case, we were to read the next number, for example, from a file. We will do such things soon enough. I want to ask the user for the next number, so user will keep providing numbers for as long as user wants, and we will accumulate them into a sum. or a total. Okay, let's try to do it. File, new file, and so I need to define a variable, another, or keep going, like we did previously. Keep with a small letter, there is no need to capitalize. Keep going will be y. Okay, and now we do our while loop. While keep going equals to y. Remember, double equality means check if that is true. We're checking this Boolean expression. This is our condition in a while loop. While keep going equals to y, do this. And what do we need to do? We need to keep our total. So I'm going to call it total equals 0, initialize it as 0. We need to ask the user to provide a number. So that would be number equals to float input give or just input a number. Okay, then we are updating our total using our augmented assignment plus equals to num. That means add number to the total. And finally, what are we missing? Take a moment to think what we're missing right now. Of course, we need a way to exit the loop. So we need to ask our user to input and say input y. Sorry, that should be a prompt. Let me do double quotes here. Input y to keep going, to enter another number. And that should do nicely. All right. Sorry, I'm just going to save it whenever. Input a number. I will input 2. Input y to enter another number, 4. And finally, we are done. I stopped it. Unfortunately, nothing printed out because I forgot to print out, and that brings the next question. Where should I do a printing statement? Over here, inside the loop, or outside the loop? So if you wanted to the current total to be printed every time the loop is working, then you want to do it here. I don't, so I'm gonna do one print statement in the end. Total is total. Okay, let's run this as it is. Input a number 23. Then input y to enter another number, y. Enter another number, 34. And y to enter another number, 1. And I guess I'm done here, 58.0. Okay, it looks right to me. Well, this is all good. There is something else that we can improve upon, and that would be using a sentinel. We might have to amend our problem a little bit. So sentinel would be a value that indicates that you are done, for example, inputting the numbers that you wanted to input or the data that you want to input, and it's typically not good data. Now, let me restrict this. Actually, I don't need to restrict this. I want to do away without keep going equals to y. And I want to do away without this everything about keep going. Sentinel to the rescue. So my design will be the following. There is really no reason to add 0 because that will not change the total if I'm adding 0. So if a user is entering 0, then it means the user is done entering numbers and will exit, and it will run a lot smoother that way. So I'm gonna do while num is not equal to 0, I will input a number and I will say enter 0 to quit. So think about this design a little bit. While my number is not 0, the next iteration will run, will ask me what the number is and then enter it. So all is well. If you try to run this, it will complain because at this point of the program, num is not defined. I can define it by anything. For example, 1. It does not matter because what will be added to the total is actual number that I'm going to ask about. So I just need to, no, it won't quite work like that. So we might have to actually ask the user to enter the first number and move this around a little bit. So here I should honestly ask the same question before the loop to define this number. And if this number is 0, then the loop will not be entered and the total will stay 0. Otherwise, we will enter the loop and we will keep going until the user actually inputs 0. So what did not work with the previous program? Stop, go back, think. There is one special case that will not work, would not have worked otherwise. Okay, here we go. Input a number, enter 0 to quit, say 1, 2, and then 3, and then 0. Altogether, I got 6, and I enter 0 to quit. We can rerun it and make sure it works, and that is a bit of a neater program, a little bit shorter, not using all that many variables as the previous version did. And you can use sometimes tricks like that. And by the way, 0 value for num is a sentinel. Basically, it means if user input 0, then break the loop. Otherwise, keep going. And that's really the meaning of sentinel. Don't forget to check out the 2 videos that I told you to check out. They are very, very good videos.